Good morning and welcome, everyone. I'm going to get closer to the mic because my voice is not large. I'm Marian Keyes and worship associate leading the service this morning. And I'm giving my name because there are people who are new-ish or who haven't been here in a while, may not know who we are, some of us. Our worship coordinator, Paul Dalzell, is in Niagara, New York, in a retreat with other UU people who are beginning their training as lay ministers. I'm hoping he'll have some time for recreation, and I'm sure he'll come back with some new friends. If you are new to the UU, that is Unitarian Universalist congregation, it has been said that if you haven't felt like you fit well in other religious groups, then you belong here. We're glad to see you. Our mission is to build a loving community and to increase justice in our neighborhood and beyond. Our principles are on the walls around you. And we will begin with any announcements. I don't have any up here. Is there anything that any of you need to let us know? And lighting the chalice. If Mike would come up, Mike Zion. Oh, okay. The Witchy Weekend is what? November 8th and 9th. Let me see because, okay. It's the Witches' Ball and Psychic Fair. Silver Raven Wolf will be in attendance. November 8th and 9th. And if you're listening in from afar, we're at 520 Canal Boulevard, West. All right. No one can give a definition of the soul, but we know what it feels like. The soul is the sense of something higher than ourselves, something that stirs in us thoughts, hopes, and aspirations. The soul is a burning desire to breathe in this world of light and never to lose it, to remain children of the light. That is by Albert Schweitzer. And we will sing a hymn to begin, For the Beauty of the Earth. And it's on page 21 in your hymnal. And we're singing verse 1, 3, and 4, skipping the second verse. The gray hymnal, yes.
For the beauty of the earth, for the splendor of the skies, for the love which from our birth over and around us lies. Source of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise.
And we are going to begin with a story of all ages, for all ages, and it is a video from the Smithsonian. We have joys and concerns. One joy is Jalen and Jenna's high school band got grand champion in yesterday's competition. So congratulations to them. Concern, which is a minor concern, but a change to take note of, the Kaleidoscope Collective isn't meeting on October 18th. Our next meeting is the 25th. We meet every second and fourth Friday at 6:30 p.m. It says, feel free to follow us on Facebook. And there's another, I could say, joy and concern. The discussion group this morning was concerning gun control, and the speaker, again, my age, I can't tell you her name. Angie can. It's Sarah Gottlieb. Has been active in trying to get some form of gun control in West Virginia. Of course, the concern is getting anyone to move on this is at least at this point, next to impossible at the government level. And we will now hold our offering. We know that our financial contributions to this congregation and its mission We have a responsive reading in the Gray Hymnal 549 in the back of the hymnal. So Marjorie Clarkson is going to be talking to us momentarily about Alexander von Humboldt. And I want to introduce you to Marjorie. I know most of you know her well, but there are some who have not been here for a while or who are new, and so I would like you to know her. She's been an active member for many years as a singer, a committee member, and a board member, but she contracted early in the pandemic, she contracted COVID, which then turned into what they call long-haul COVID at a time when health professionals were not even recognizing that that was a thing. So it has been a long haul for her. She's at last recovering. I won't say recovered, period, because I think it takes, I don't know how long, but she's on the way. And to our good fortune, returning to active duty. Marjorie is a passionate intellectual who, when she discovers something that excites her, digs deeper, moves broader, and loves to share what she learns. Today, she will tell of her discovery of Alexander von Humboldt, the man whose research led to our 7th principle, respect for the independent web of which we are, of existence of which we're all a part. So I give you Marjorie.
Thank you, Marion. Good morning, and welcome to the world of Alexander von Humboldt. I became aware of the marvelous Humboldt a few months ago when I heard a National Public Radio reporter ask on the air, who had the most things and places named after them? Immediately I thought, Washington. The reporter immediately answered, not Washington. The reporter went on to say, over 300 plants, animals, and places were named for Alexander von Humboldt. Who? Who is this person with a strange name I've never heard of? I ran to my computer to fill this obvious hole in my knowledge of famous people. I quickly found myself climbing a mountain of Humboldt history and the histories of those influenced by him. I learned Humboldt was a 19th century Prussian scientist who, along with many other qualities, appeared to be an odd combination of two 20th century movie characters, Forrest Gump and Indiana Jones. Like Gump, Humboldt met famous people and influenced significant historical events. Like Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark, he was a scientist, an adventurer who relished exploring harsh environments that offered excitement and danger. In fact, I considered adding a subtitle of Thrills and Spills in the Amazon Jungle to Marion's title for the presentation. In my research, I learned Humboldt was as well known in the 19th century as Beyoncé and Taylor Swift are in the 21st. Only Napoleon Bonaparte was better known in the 19th century than Humboldt. By the way, Humboldt knew Napoleon. The two men did not care for each other. Andrea Wolf's 2015 best-selling and award-winning biography, The Invention of Nature, Alexander von Humboldt's New World, and a major exhibit at the Smithsonian Institution, where that video came from, in 2020, propelled this long-dead Prussian aristocrat to being written and talked about currently with growing enthusiasm, especially by young environmentalists. Wolf's book was described by a reviewer for the Sydney Herald as bringing Humboldt back to life. It goes on to say, this marvelous book restores Humboldt to the pantheon of great thinkers who changed our understanding of the world. Why is it important to me, and I hope to you, to know who Humboldt was? For me, I am grateful to learn about a man who possessed extraordinary intellectual gifts, made major scientific discoveries, and spoke truth to power, even at the risk of banishment or worse. Napoleon threatened banishment because he viewed Humboldt as a political radical and possibly a spy for Prussia. Though Humboldt had strong views about politics, he held a stronger view that scientists did not war with each other, though the countries they lived in did. Friedrich Wilhelm Heinrich Alexander von Humboldt was born on September 4, 1769, into a wealthy aristocratic family in Berlin. Alexander and his older brother Wilhelm were tutored by well-respected scholars with Enlightenment views which emphasized the use of reason and logic as the primary source of knowledge, advocating for individual liberty, religious tolerance, progress, and a belief that humans could improve society through rational inquiry. By contrast, a mature Humboldt was described as a proponent of Romantic philosophy. The German Romantic period was a time when artists, writers, and scientists in Germany emphasized nature, emotion, and individualism. I think Humboldt became a perfect melding of his tutor's Enlightenment views and those of his Romantic peers in science and the arts. With his strict adherence to precision and frequent measurement of all nature's productions, along with a deep and personal commitment to experiencing emotionally, physically, and intuitively everything he witnessed and measured. It's an elegant combination of precision and passion. He is also frequently described as a polymath, a person of great and varied learning. In addition to being intellectually gifted, Humboldt was also exceptional in his mannerisms. For one thing, he spoke twice as fast as most people spoke. He spoke gently, but at a speed and with an enormous variety of subjects tumbling out that listening to him could be both exhilarating and exhausting. His biographer believed his speech was reflective of his thinking, which was twice as fast as most people's. In spite of all the writing that Humboldt did, he found time to go to 5 salons an evening when he lived in Paris, staying 30 minutes at each one, mesmerizing the diners with his storytelling about the Amazon or his latest scientific obsession, before leaving to dominate the conversation at the next salon. In addition to having a sharp wit, he had a sharp tongue to match. His admirers and detractors both feared his comments about them. Some refused to leave any gathering before he did, for fear if they were absent, they could become the target of his ridicule. One example of Humboldt's wit is, there are 3 stages of scientific discovery. First, people deny it is true. Then they deny it is important. Finally, they credit the wrong scientist. He was quite handsome, as his portraits show. President Madison's wife, Dolly Madison, said all the women in Washington who met him fell in love with him. A woman charmed by Humboldt asked him, "Have you ever fallen in love?" He responded, "Yes, and it was with science." He was not a materialist. He dressed simply, lived in rented and donated accommodations, and spent his money on scientific instruments, payments to book engravers, and giving financial support to young, poor scientists. Most of his own large inheritance paid for his 5-year exploration of the Americas. And that was the trip that made him famous. Between 1799 and 1804, Humboldt traveled extensively in the Americas, exploring and describing them for the first time with a non-Spanish European scientific point of view. His description of the journey was written and published in several volumes over 21 years. During his 5 years in Latin America, Humboldt marked the course of rivers, measured mountains, recorded the vocabulary of indigenous languages, studied the artifacts of the Aztec and other civilizations, and collected economic data. In the Andes, Humboldt walked along roads traveled centuries before by the Inca and climbed nearly to the top of Mount Chimborazo, reaching a dizzying height of more than 19,000 feet. Humboldt traveled through the vast meadowlands inhabited by desperados, and he paddled wild waterways in a 40-foot canoe crammed with 12 men, monkeys, a mastiff, and equipment that included chronometers, barometers, telescopes, thermometers, compasses, sextants, and a cyanometer, an instrument to measure the blueness of the sky. When I read this, I was surprised and delighted to learn someone cares about the blueness of the sky. I decided I wanted a cyanometer, and I went online to find one. I only found crafty kits to make one's own, which had no appeal to me. But what could be more delightful than checking out the blueness of the sky every day? Now, here are the spills and thrills in the Amazon jungle I mentioned earlier. And this is from the National Association for the Humanities. With its volcanoes and waterfalls, crocodile-infested waters and jungles, the interior of South America provided plenty to marvel at and much to fear. Humboldt received shocks from electric eels and nearly poisoned himself with the curare, a plant-derived toxin used by Amazonian Indians to bring down prey. His fellow botanist, Monsieur Beauplan, had to save him from nearly drowning because Humboldt could not swim. And when he was uncomfortably close to a jaguar, Humboldt noted, "There are moments in life when it is useless to call on reason." Although scared, he did use reason. He remembered to walk, not run away. Humboldt also mentioned a python large enough to swallow a horse. Now, I fact-checked this. Yes, and learned there are pythons that can swallow horses and cattle. He made many important discoveries, but I only will read 3 to you. Plate tectonics. Humboldt was one of the first people to propose that the lands bordering the Atlantic Ocean were once joined, South America and Africa in particular. This is one of his significant discoveries that was not generally accepted in the scientific world until the 1960s. He arrived at this theory because of his extensive knowledge of plants growing on the west coast of Africa that were the same as those growing on the east coast of South America. The centuries later theory of continental drift was based on the observation that the continents fit together like a jigsaw puzzle. However, the theory was initially ridiculed and rejected because it was difficult to imagine that such large and mobile blocks of crust could move through the Earth's mantle, which was thought to be rigid and dense. The theory of plate tectonics became more widely accepted by geoscientists in the mid to late 1960s after the validation of seafloor spreading. Deforestation. It was at Lake Valencia in northern Venezuela where Humboldt developed his idea that humans were negatively impacting the climate. In his 1814 book, Personal Narrative of a Journey to the Equinoctial Regions of the New Continent, he wrote, "When forests are destroyed, as they are everywhere in South America by the European planters, the springs are entirely dried up or become less abundant. The beds of the rivers remaining dry during a part of the year are converted into torrents whenever great rains fall on the heights. The sward and moss disappearing from the brushwood on the sides of the mountains. The waters falling in rain are no longer impeded in their course, and instead of slowly augmenting the level of the rivers by progressive filtrations, they furrow down heavy showers in the sides of the hills, bear down the loose soil, and form those sudden inundations that devastate the country." And I thought, just as importantly, while describing the destruction of the land by the Spanish colonizers, he also spoke of the destruction of the native plants that were eliminated to produce cash crops, affecting the local inhabitants greatly because they could no longer grow the plants they needed to eat, which meant they had to buy food that was imported by the colonizers, which made them poorer and hungrier. And last but not least, the web of life. Alexander von Humboldt most notably described the web of life concept in his observation of vegetation patterns across different altitudinal mountains while studying a volcano in Ecuador, where he visualized the interconnectedness of plants and their environment as a holistic, and this is on the front of your order of service, this is the diagram, where he visualized the interconnectedness of plants and their environment as a holistic Naturgemälde, which is in German, painting of nature, which is considered the first depiction of the interconnected web life of idea. His visual representation, he used diagrams and cross-sections of the mountains to illustrate how different plants in different life zones were connected based on altitude, temperature, and humidity. And his concept went beyond individual species, emphasizing the interdependence between all living organisms and the environment, including humans. And the impact on science, this idea of a connected natural world was groundbreaking for its time and laid the foundation for modern ecological thinking. I just want to mention a couple of people that he influenced, and he influenced many scientists and artists and poets and writers. But Charles Darwin, since we're all very familiar with Charles Darwin, is the one I want to talk about. It was Humboldt's book, Personal Narrative, an account of his expedition to South America, that inspired Darwin to travel and become a naturalist. He knew parts of the book by heart and even brought it along with him on his expedition. When Darwin published Voyage of the Beagle in 1839, he sent a copy to Humboldt in Berlin. When Humboldt received his copy, he replied with a long letter praising it as an excellent and admirable book. "You have an excellent future ahead of you," he wrote. Here was the most famous scientist of the age graciously telling the 30-year-old Darwin that he held the torch of science. And I want to mention our own John Muir of Yosemite Valley fame. Muir was inspired by Humboldt's ecological thinking and the idea that nature is a web of life. Muir's famous quote, "If you pull at something in the universe, you'll find it hitched to everything else," is based on Humboldt's ideas. And Muir was influenced by Humboldt's use of scientific methods, art, history, literature, and economics to study nature. But also Muir was a very interesting person, saw Humboldt as a life model and was inspired by his joy of nature. Muir wrote to a friend, "How intensely I desire to be a Humboldt." And so there are too many people, as I said, influenced by Humboldt to list, but Henry David Thoreau, Edgar Allan Poe, who wrote a 130-page poem dedicated to Humboldt, Aldous Huxley, Jules Verne, Walt Whitman, Rachel Carson, Saul Bellow. The list goes on, and I'm sure there are many that I'm unaware of. After his return from the Americas, Humboldt lived contentedly in Paris for many years before he reluctantly returned to Berlin when his country's king demanded that he be in court daily to answer questions about various subjects. The court had been paying a sinecure to Humboldt for years that allowed him to live in Paris in an apartment. Back in Berlin, Humboldt gave scores of popular and public lectures in a range of topics with no admittance charge. All were welcome, including women, which was unusual and ridiculed by some. By not charging an entry fee, Humboldt had democratized science. His packed audiences ranged from the royal family to coachmen, from students to servants, from scholars to bricklayers, and half of those attending were women. Berlin had never seen anything like it. An hour before Humboldt took the podium, the auditorium was already crowded. "The jostle is frightful," said Fanny Mendelssohn, the sister of the composer Felix Mendelssohn. But it was all worth it. Women who were not permitted to study at universities or even attend meetings of the scientific societies were finally allowed to listen to a clever word. She said, Fanny said, "The gentlemen might scoff at us as much as they like," she told a friend, "but the experience was marvelous." For Humboldt, education was the highest value because knowledge is power. He strove to promote democracy and equality. Alexander von Humboldt died at the age of 89 years on May 6, 1859. His last words were recorded as, "How glorious are these sunbeams." And I'd like to add that I'd like to make Humboldt an honorary UU because he promoted all of our principles. So thank you, and I'm glad I got to talk to you about Humboldt.
I'm thinking we've got some time. If there are any questions anybody has, I'd like to ask her.
Well, let me tell you a couple of other things about Humboldt. Well, his first job out of university, and it was, he was in a course that was, I guess his major was mining. And a lot of the aristocrats went to the mining schools and ended up being involved in government and running the mines. And he, in a very, very short period of time, became a mine inspector. And he was disturbed that many of the miners didn't know a lot about what they were doing or why they were doing it. They were just told to do it. So he started a school for miners. And he paid for it out of his own pocket because he felt it important that they know as much as it was possible to teach them about what they were doing and how to keep themselves safer. He also invented, the first thing he invented was a wick that the miners then had a burning wick on their hats when they went into the mines. And he built one, he invented one that wasn't just one piece, but it was one piece, but it was hollow, so it could burn longer. And he decided to try it out himself before having the miners go into the mine in it. So he went very deep into the mine and stayed for a long time. In fact, so long, he passed out and had to be dragged out by his feet. So he was that committed to making sure that it was safe for the miners to use and also for them to be able to remain in places a little longer than they usually could. What else? Any questions? And I hope I can answer them, but yes, Neil. Sure. I want you to come up, Neil, because Neil actually has done some research on him too.
Well, really all I did was I put his name into Google, after reading the announcement for this service, and what I saw was an article about him announcing human-caused climate change in 1831. So I thought that was really remarkable, and he noticed it from mining activity and lakes draining and he had a whole chain of causal things I don't remember, but it's easy to find if you just search his name.
I just wanted to mention how there was a national holiday for Humboldt in the United States.
Oh.
And that there are many areas and places out west especially
Exactly. And our own Mike Foster lived in Humboldt County. And oh, yes, she was talking about all the places named after Humboldt, like Humboldt County, Humboldt Mountains, where a friend of ours recently went. And that is important. The author of this book that I read speculates that the reason he stopped being as popular in this country, and he was very popular, even it was the 100th anniversary of his birth in New York, and they had big celebrations for him all over the country. He was extremely well known, but she thinks it's because of World War I and World War II that we fought with the Germans. So this anti-German sentiment came into being. And in fact, she wrote that in Ohio, Columbus, they were burning books by German authors. And I thought, my goodness, book burning again. And so he's very well known in South America, and I think still and there's Humboldt University in Berlin, and I just heard the other night an interview with a young neurobiologist who was studying elephant trunks and how elephants, like people, are either right-handed or left-handed, and they use their trunks either to the right or the left. And at the end of this interview with her, she said she was at Humboldt University in Berlin, and it was his brother, Wilhelm, actually, who had a very notable career and was responsible for starting a university, and perhaps that university. So, yeah, there are just endless number of things, interesting things. And so, in fact, I was saying to Beverly that we should have Humboldt fan clubs. Well, I went online and found out there is an association, the Humboldt Association, and there are all of these people, scientists and other people, who do belong, because clearly he's still recognized in some circles, but not just generally. That's why when I learned about him, I thought, wow, this incredible person. Not only, and for me, it was his values and the way he lived as much as what he discovered. So, yeah, and I'll finish by saying that Charles Darwin wrote, I admired Humboldt, but now I adore him. And I think, I feel the same. I adore him. Thank you.
I was thinking as Marjorie was talking about how I always thought as I grew up, something that I think salespeople are taught to do. You say, every day in every way I am getting better and better. And I thought that the human race was, getting better and better. And now you look at people like Humboldt and you look at the fact that we are still saying either it's not true or it's not, what was the other? And not important. And it seems like we're still stuck there when it comes to climate change. It's not true, and don't tell me differently. But fix things if I get flooded or blown away. Make it good for me because I don't want to be inconvenienced. Let me see. I realized, I told myself when I said I would do this, now remember, you have to follow the order of service. And I just skipped two big things. We will leave the meditation skipped, but I do want to do the unison affirmation, because to me that is kind of the kernel of what we are as UUs. Love is the spirit of our faith, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. And we will now sing hymn 1064. It's in the Teal book, and I think
Can't read the words and the music at the same time, so sorry.
when despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethoughts of grief. I come into the presence of still waters, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting. That is from Wendell Berry. As you leave this place, may you rest in the grace of the world and feel free.
We have Charleston Red cookies and apple juice.
Yes, cookies and apple juice, everyone. I'm sorry if you're watching from afar.
Oh, you're welcome.